All right, so welcome again. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the foundational class for IT Skills Center Bootcamp. And my name is Okoyemi Mano. I'll be your host and your instructor for tonight. You'll be getting to see more other instructors as time goes by. So we did a meeting last week, I guess. I can't remember what day now, but we had a meeting last week, and it was an introduction to IT Skills Center generally. And we did a good job of introducing you to what IT Skills Center, what we do, our team members, what team members we have. We're about currently about 24 persons. Can you mute yourself if you're not speaking? Anoke Chima, we have Chima Lawal. Can you mute yourself? Yeah. Thank you very much. So, like I said, last week we did a very good job of introducing IT Skills Center to you, and I won't do that again today. But just for the sake of those who are just joining us, we build mobile. We're a software development company in Lagos, Lagos, Nigeria. We are based in where we build mobile apps and web apps that work, and we are currently about 24 in number. Out of that number, about 12 to 14, about 14 of us are developers, right? We have project managers, we have software testers, UI UX designers, and the rest. So you can watch the video playback on YouTube about IT Skills Center. The video we did, the last class, right? So this class is for coding, and we are doing basically introduction to HTML, right? So we'll be introducing everyone to HTML and a bit of into CSS, even though we're going to be getting into CSS very much in detail by the next class, which is, I think, on the 5th. Today is the 4th. Okay, that will be tomorrow. I think on the 5th, on the 8th. Just check the website for the next class, right? So without much ado, let's get into HTML. So what's HTML, right? For those from the survey we did the last class, we realized that about 80% of you guys already know HTML. So I will just move as fast as I can so that I will not waste time. 80% already know HTML. About roughly 50% have an idea of JavaScript, and then the number keeps dropping as it goes down into other languages. But since almost everybody already knows HTML, even though most people that claim they know HTML really sometimes they don't really know it that much, but everybody seems to know HTML these days. But let's just go over it. So I won't spend time explaining over and over again, because about 80% to 85% already know HTML. So there's no point stressing and wasting time. So I'll just skim through it and then assume that for about the 15% that is left, that this is the first time they are seeing HTML. Those are the people I will really be trying to address tonight. So, but if you have not done HTML before, like this is the first time you are going to write your first line of code tonight, can you just indicate by raising your hand on the Zoom comment section? Just kind of raise your hand. There is a hand raising icon somewhere there. You can raise your hand if this is the first time. Like tonight is the first time that you're going to be writing your first line of code, so that I would know how fast I should go. All right, so Felix is the first time, Lawal first time, Basi first time, Blessing first time. Okay, so we have quite a number of first timers. All right, so for the sake of these 4 persons, I will try to explain, and for the rest, if it's a bit boring, don't give up, don't run off on me. Just be patient and just watch along. I'm sure you will learn 1 or 2 things tonight, right? Kingsley, can you mute yourself? All right, thank you. All right, so we have quite a lot of persons who are going to be using HTML for the first time, so that's fine. So I think we have enough persons to go slowly. Let's get started. So like I was saying, HTML is simply an the full meaning of HTML is hypertext markup language. And what that means is that it's the language of the browser. Is the language that allows the browser to render screens or render a particular page for you to see or for the users to interact with. And the browser does not really output the HTML as it were, but it outputs the content or the instruction that the HTML is passing. So for example, this is an example of an HTML tag. So you see this H2 here, and then you see, let me just move this quite to the side and then this to this side. All right. So you can see this H2 tag here. Oh my God. Some more persons are noisy. Just pardon those who are joining and they are not muting their mic. Do I need to call at once? All right. So as I was saying, HTML means hypertext markup language, and it simply means that is a set of instructions to the browser to tell the browser how to display a particular content on the screen. So everything you see. So for example, I go to facebook.com, for example, and everything I'm seeing on the screen of Facebook, for example, it's a piece of HTML and CSS, right? So the HTML is more like the skeleton of what you are seeing on the screen. So you are seeing this add account setup, you are seeing business payments, make payments, blah, blah, blah. You see this open payment settings, you see remove user, add people, and all of these that you see on the screen is a piece of HTML content. So there is an HTML code somewhere that says that this content should be displayed this way. There's a piece of code that says this particular item. Oh God. Okay, so there's a piece of content everywhere, that tells the browser exactly how to display what is on the screen, right? So that is HTML for you. So HTML is just a piece of code that tells the browser how to display what it needs to display on the screen. So I'm going to move to the next slide. And it's the way HTML works is that HTML simply is made up of tags, right? What are tags? Tags are just an element that is wrapped in a bracket. So you have an open bracket, you have a B. I use an example of an HTML element. I will explain what a B means later. So you have it written this way. So let me create a new file so that we just get started. So for as many of you that don't have, if you don't have an HTML editor, an HTML editor is something like a Notepad++. You can have a Notepad++. So if you want to have a Notepad++, you can go to any of your browsers and download Notepad++. Just download Notepad++, or if you already have Visual Studio Code, which is what I'm going to use tonight, you can, just launch it on your screen right now. But if you don't have that, you can download it, but this takes a lot of time to download VS Code afresh, but you can take time to download after the class. But if you want to just quickly join me in what I'm doing on this call, and you want to be as fast as possible, you can just download Notepad++ in less than 5 minutes, right? Just go to their website and download it quickly so that you can write the same set of codes that I'm writing. Okay, so you need an editor like Notepad++ or a VS Code to be able to type and practice what I'm doing on this class. So let's get started. So I said I was explaining how tags work or how HTML works. So let me open a new file. So I've launched my VS Code, which you can launch if you're on a Windows system. Go to your Windows menu bar, look for VS Code, or you can just do VS Code and it will bring it up in your menu, Windows menu. So click on it. It's going to launch a new Windows for you like this, a new VS Code for you like this. So click on new file. And then when you click on new file, it's going to ask you what type of editor you want to use. I have this test file, so I'm going to click on it. So it gives me an untitled fresh blank page, right? So in this fresh blank page, I can start typing. Lawal, do you have a question? If you don't have a question, you can lower your hand. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and I'll be able to know that I can take your question. So I will advise that we ask our question at the end of the class. So you can lower your hand for those who raised their hand before. You can lower your hand so that I can be sure to take those who have questions. But I would advise we take questions at the end of maybe in about 15 minutes from now, we'll take questions just to get that you're following. So because if I take question, if you keep bumping into what I'm saying, we will spend more time. So let's get started, right? So I was talking about the HTML tag. I said HTML tag is made up of elements, and those elements are wrapped in open and close brackets. So an HTML tag is, for example, an open bracket like that, a B, a closed bracket, an open bracket, and then a front slash, a B, and a closed bracket. This one here is called the opening tag, right? It's called the opening tag. Why this other one is called the closing tag? Let me explain what that means. It means that every HTML element is made up of two tags, an opening tag and a closing tag, right? So if you want to write any HTML element, whether a paragraph, an H1, and any other element you will see in the course of this lecture, they are made up of two tags, the B tag or the opening tag or the closing tag, right? And there are some other type of tags that are called self-enclosing tags. Let me show you that. So self-enclosing tags. What that means is that there are some tags that they don't necessarily have the opening and closing brace. They just, open. For example, a brake. A brake is a self-enclosing tag because it opens up like that and it closes itself like this. So you don't have the open and closing tag in this way. So you just have it open and close itself. So those ones, there are some exceptions like that. Those ones are called self-enclosing tag. And another example is an HR, right? That's another self-enclosing tag. Another example is an input. So we will get to see more of this, but I'm just explaining to you what tags are and how they work. So HTML are simply some bunch of tags, and those tags are set of instructions to the browser. You can mute yourself if you are not speaking, please. Soenu, Chima, Ghost, please mute yourself, right? So that is what tags are all about. So let's go to the basic part of an HTML document. What is the standard structure of an HTML page? That is what we are going to look at next. So the standard structure of an HTML page is made up of 3 sections: the declaration section, the head section, and the body section. Let me say that again. The standard part, 3 parts that makes up an HTML page is into number 1, the declaration section, the head section, and the body section, right? So let me just wipe this page. I'm going to clean this page and I'm going to write for you those 3 sections I've just mentioned. So an HTML page starts with what we call the declaration section, which is made up of the word HTML itself, right? So anytime you want to write an HTML code, you always start with the HTML open tag and the HTML close tag. Every other thing will be written in between those 2 tags. Chinedu and Blessing, do you have a question? If you don't have a question, you can lower your hands, right? So I was saying that there are 3 parts that makes up an HTML page. The first part is the declaration section. That declaration section is what I've just started with. So it states HTML tag open, HTML tag close. This first tag is the very first tag that opens up an HTML code. Chima, Ghost, and Soenu, please mute yourself. Let me see if I can mute them. Mute. Okay, thank you. So this is the declaration section. The head section is made up of the head open and the head close, right? The head open and the head close. So I will explain what goes into this head tag soon. And then the last part of the HTML page is called the body, right? It's called the body. So these are the 3 sections that makes up these are the 3 sections that makes up an HTML page. These are the 3 sections that makes up an HTML page. So if you see it very well now, if you see what I'm looking at, you have the declaration part, which is the HTML open and close tag. We have the head part, which is the head tag, open and close. We have the body tag, which is the open body and close body. Are we all following? So this is the structure of a standard HTML page. The HTML open tag, the head open and close tag, the body open and close tag. If you have noticed something on the screen, right, we notice that when you open something, when you open a particular tag, you cannot close it and have something. How do I explain this now? For example, you cannot have this body start here, right? You cannot have this body start here. Why? Because when you open a particular tag, you need to close that tag. You cannot have an overlapping tags like this. So you have an head open, you have a body open, then you close the head, then you close the body. This is very wrong. You cannot do this. So it's called something cascading, right? So there is, every time you open an open tag, you need to close that tag before you close the outermost shell. So this is the outermost element right now, which is the HTML. That guy needs to be, since he's the first guy to open up, he needs to be the last guy to close. So the principle is more like a first in, last out, right? First in, last out, rather than the way we have it in a queue, first in, first out. So it's first in, last out. So the first tag that you open will be the last tag to close. The second tag that you open, of course, will not close immediately. It cannot close immediately like that. So you need to understand that logic so that you don't overlap your tags. I believe that is clear. So these are the basic structure. This is the basic structure of any HTML page you will ever see. Let's move to the next slide. So the next slide is let's start writing our code now. I've already explained all of this. So I've explained this, that this is the basic structure of your HTML page. You have the HTML tag, you have the head part, you have the body part. So let me explain what happens inside the head part, right? Inside this head tag, that's where you have things like your styling, your CSS link, your title, your JavaScript code. If you have any JavaScript file, you can link to it. So everything in this head part is basically reference or information that tells the browser what kind of content it should expect or what other assets or files it needs to use within the body part of the HTML. Let me say that again. In the head part of your code, what goes into the head part is usually some declaration of some assets, some images, some external files, some maybe JavaScript file and whatever. So you have a lot of declaration going into the head file. So what you have in the head not necessarily is what, so it's not what is shown on the screen that you have in the head. It's just declaration informing the browser about some external assets that it should use within the body. But within the body, what goes into the body is actually the HTML content that needs to be displayed to the user. That's what you have within the body, right? So I believe that is clear. Let's move to the next thing. So let's quickly look at the first example of what goes into the head part. The first example we want to look at is called the title. It's called the title. And like I told you, we've looked at the principle of HTML elements. Most of the HTML elements that we'll have or that you will ever see is usually an open tag and a closing tag. I've already explained that. And I told you that when you open a tag, usually it will close before the guy who is his parent will close. So you cannot have overlapping. This guy cannot come and close after the head has closed. Why? Because this one is the parent of this guy. This child must have his closing tag before the parent will close. You cannot have a parent open up, a child opens up, you close the parents before you close the child. No, that is wrong. So you need to close. If you open up a child inside a parent, the child must close first before the parent will close. That is the principle. Let's go to the next thing. So I was explaining the title. The title is simply the title of the page, right? It's what shows up at the top of a page. If you visit a website, if you look at the top of this page, for example, how many of you can see this? If you can see it, just drop I, or I can see in the chat box so that I know you are following me. If you can see this 16 in bracket and Ads Manager at the top of this page, just drop I, or I can see in the chat box. How many of you are with me? Okay, so good. You can see. Thank you. All right. So let's move on. So I was talking about 16 and Ads Manager up here. So this thing that shows up at the top of your website, every website usually have that. If you go to any website, let me go to which website now? Let me go to tryback.com. Let me go to itskillcenter.com. Any website you go to, you can see at the top here, knowledge base. That is the title of the page. So whatever shows up at the top of a website is the title of that page. So what you want to display at the top of your page is what you put at the title area there, right? So that's what goes in there. So I have clicked Control S on my keyboard. Let me close it and do a proper Control save. So I come here, File, and then I will have a save button here, which is also Control S, which is what I clicked before. So I want to save my file now so that I can preview it in the browser so that you can see exactly what I'm doing in my browser. So I'm going to click my save button. It's going to pop up my system, and I'm going to go to my desktop, locate where I want to save this file, go into the foundational class, and then I'm going to save this as lecture 1, right? So this is lecture1.html. Don't forget that when you are saving your file, for those who are new to this, when you click on Control S after typing what we've typed so far, and you want to save your work, make sure that the extension is .html. It is not .txt, it is not .csv, it is not any other extension except .html. So if you meet something else here, make sure you change it to .html. So give it any name you like. The first half of it before the dot, you can name it anything you want, lecture 1, class 1, whatever. You can give it your name. but make sure the last part, the last half.
Thank you.
Hello, Code Cafe and Yusuf, can you mute yourself? Yeah, so the second half of that name should be .html. Please make sure you do that. Otherwise you will not be able to preview your work, right? So I'm going to save now. Now that I've saved, I can easily go to my foundational class on my desktop. So I'm going to drag the CD folder on my desktop. I'm going to double click to open it. And I'm going to double click also this lecture one to open that up in my browser. So the lecture one should open up here. So if you've noticed now, if you notice what I've done, so the only thing we have within our code is Bootcamp foundational class within the title of the head, right? So what that means is that if I come to this page, you can see at the top here. I need to mute someone again. Code Cafe, you are not muted. I don't know why you are muting yourself. Can you mute yourself, Code Cafe and Odikeme? All right, thank you. Yeah, so if you check what we've just done, Bootcamp foundational class, you can see at the top here, it's the title of the page, Bootcamp foundational class. That is how you add a title to the page, right? So I'm going to move fast now. Let's go to the next slide, which of course is what I've explained. The title of the page, it shows up at the top of the page right there. Let's go to the head tags. So this is the first element you'll be learning, right? This is the first element you'll be learning. The first element has to do with the headings. So you have from H1 to H6 based on the different sizes, right? So H1 is the HTML element that allows you to make something come out in a very big size. The font size of H1 is about 30. H2 is a little smaller than H1. H3 is a little smaller than H2, and all the way like that. So let's test that. I told you that the head part is where you put all your declaration and your assets. The body part is where you actually type the code that should be displayed on the screen. So I'm going to type this H1 now within the body part and not within the head, because whatever you write in this head part will not be displayed on the screen. It's just an instruction to the browser telling it what assets and what external file, except for this title that shows up at the top here. Every other thing must, anything that you want the user to see on the screen should be within the body part. And you cannot write any code within the head and the body, right? Things go in either inside the head or inside the body, except you have a script, which I will mention later. But ideally, even the script tag should go within the head or the body. So let's quickly demonstrate our H1 tag. So this is our H1 tag, and it's a big heading, right? So I'm going to duplicate this quickly just to change it to H2, H3, H2, H3, H4, H5, just to show you the different sizes, and H6, right? So same thing here, H6, H5, H4, H3, H2. So when I save this and I go back to that page, this is our lecture one h.html. You can see it at the top here. This is our lecture one.html. If I refresh this page now, I should see all of this code on the screen. When I refresh this page, I should see all of this, my code on the screen, but not as this H1 tag, because like I told you, HTML is an instruction given to the browser to tell you how to display something or to tell it what to display. So by the time I refresh this page, I will not be seeing H1 written like this, because this H1, the browser understands what H1 means. So it's going to interpret it, and then it's going to do something with it based on this text. So let me refresh and show you that. So can you see it? We are no longer seeing this H1 as we have it here, but we are seeing this big heading, right? Big heading, but it's now bigger. Why? Because big heading inside an H1 tag tells it that it should use a particular size for it. H2, a little smaller than H1, like that. So H6 is the smallest, right? So that is what we have for H1. So we're going to use. Or just talking without meeting. Chima, yeah, if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. I will call you so that you don't interrupt, right? So if you want to ask a question, you can just raise your hand, then I will notice that and I will call you, right? So let's go to the next slide. So we have the next slide. The next slide says that we're going to quickly look at paragraph. Paragraph is the next element that we're going to learn, which is made up of this tag called P, right? So we've just learned the heading elements, H1 to H6. Then the next element we want to learn is the paragraph element. That allows us to type a lot of content, right? So I'm going to just say this is my first paragraph, right? Just to show you what that looks like. So when I save this and I go back to my landing page or my website class notes, if I refresh this, I get this is my first paragraph. So this is what a paragraph looks like, right? Chima, you can unmute and ask a question now. Chima, do you
I don't have any question. I don't have any question, please. No.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, so that's the paragraph. Let's move on quickly. Anybody with any question? I believe it's so simple and clear for now. All right, so let's move ahead. Let's move ahead. I believe everybody can still hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes.
All right.
Can I ask a question quickly, lecturer? I just want to ask, like you have the H1 to 6.
Yeah.
Why don't we have different kind of fonting for the paragraph?
Yeah, definitely. You can have different fonts for the paragraph, but that's when we get to attributes and CSS where you can control the fonts. As at this time where we are in this course, you have not learned anything about fonts. So you can't control the font size. Yeah.
So we're going to get there eventually, right?
Yeah, we'll get there, yes. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so so far we've looked at the H1 to H6, we've looked at the paragraph. Let's quickly look at the break. That's another element we're going to look at, the break. Break, as it is written here, can you see my cursor? It's written as BR and then backslash. This is the first self-enclosing tag you'll be learning. And like I told you before, there are some tags that are made up of open and close tags, while some are made up of self-enclosing tags. So they don't have a second half. They just open up and close themselves. So this BR, for example, is made up of a self-enclosing tag, and the job of this guy is to break something from one line to the next line. So let me just say, this is the first paragraph. This is the second paragraph, right? Paragraph. So I'm going to refresh this page so that you see what that looks like. You can see they are both on the same line. This is the first paragraph, full stop, this second paragraph. If I put a BR tag right here, and I refresh this page, this BR's job is to break something into two lines. So when I refresh this, you're going to see that it's broken, right? So that's how it just breaks it down to the next line. That's a BR. That's the job of a BR. So let's move to the next thing. There are some other elements you're going to be learning quickly. Italics. Italics can be written in two ways. You can use the I tags, and you can use the EM tags. Both of them works as italics. You have the bold. Bold also can be written in two ways. The reason why it's written in two ways is because there have been improvements or different versions of HTML over time. So when HTML was released in 1995, when the internet became the W3 consortium came up with the HTML and all of that, and they started. So there have been a lot of improvements. 2003, 2004 version, 2013. So HTML is currently at XHTML. So we have HTML1, HTML2, HTML3, HTML4, HTML5. Then we have XHTML and all of that. So these are different versions of HTML over the years, So before now, we used to use I as italics, but in a particular HTML version, they changed it to EM. Some before now, we used to use bold, which is B. And then over time, they changed it to strong. So both of them still works and they are still very valid, right? If you want to underline any element, you just wrap it with a U. So I believe so far you are learning all of these elements. So like I said, these are just set of instructions to the browser to tell the browser what to do with the text you have on the screen. So let me quickly demonstrate the underline. So if you want to underline the first paragraph here, all you need to do is identify the elements you want to, instruct the browser to do something to, and then you can wrap it with that particular element. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to wrap the first paragraph. So I'm going to wrap the first paragraph with the U tag. What that means is that it's going to underline the first paragraph here, starting from first to paragraph. So I'm going to refresh now. When I refresh this page, you will see that this guy will be underlined. So when I'm going to refresh now, so you can see it. I hope it's clear enough and obvious enough. Let me just kind of increase my font size so that you can see this better. All right. So as you can see, this is my first paragraph here. Is now a bit, is underlined, right? So that's you. So let's go to the next thing. So we've looked at that. The next one we want to look at is what we call link list or bullets. So sometimes in your code, you want to do something like a list. You want to have something listed in a particular order, or you want it to be given numbers or alphabets. Anytime you want to list something, there is an element for that in HTML, and it's called list. And the way you write it is you start with, it's made up of two tags, right? You have the ordered list and you have the unordered list. So let me just go down a bit and then come here. So you have the UL. So the UL stands for unordered list, right? Unordered list. And what that means is that there is no particular order to this list that we want to create. And what that means is that when this list is going to be displayed on the browser will simply use something like a bullet point to represent the numbering, instead of giving it number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or ABC. So ABC 1, 2, 3 is an ordered list. But anytime you are trying to represent something that is not ordered, it's not in a particular order, you should not use 1, 2, 3 to represent it. Then you can use UL, right? So let's try that now. I'm going to call it UL. I'm going to call it, let's say, beans. Let's just call these names of food. So I'm going to put it as names of food, right? And then we call it beans, we say rice, something like that. We say yam. And then this is an example of unordered list. If I save this now, I go to my page and I refresh, I get something like this. Names of food is, something that came up because of this H2 that we have at the top. And then these bullets here is because of the UL that we have here. And then of course the LI now produce the list called beans, rice, yam. So anytime you want to have a list of items like this, and then you don't want it to represent it with numbers like alphabetical letters or numeric numbers, then you can use what we call UL. But what if you want to use numbers? That other one is called OL. OL is ordered list, right? So we can represent the same thing with, OL, and then when we refresh this, we will get a different listing. So you can see that. Fantastic. So you see LI here at work, which is the unordered list, and you see OL, which is the ordered list, right? So that's how it works, right? So I believe there are no questions for now. If there are questions, you can raise your hand and I will take your question. But let's go to the next thing quickly. The next one we want to look at, okay, Pelumi wants to ask a question. Go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry, please, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
What about listing with alphabets?
If you want to list with alphabet, we can do that with CSS. So it's simply just changing the text, is it text transform now? There's a particular style, there's a particular CSS attribute I need to add that will switch it to alphabet instead of numbers. That's all. So it's just a CSS. So when we get to that CSS, I will show you how to do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. You're welcome. All right, so the next thing we want to look at is adding an image, right? So if you want to add an image to your HTML page, the tag is simply written like this. So it's an img tag, and it's a self-enclosing tag, right? Unlike all these ones that open and closes, an image tag opens up and closes by itself. So that's the format of an image tag. So anytime you want to include image on your page, Palumi, you can lower your hand, so I'm sure that you are not trying to ask a question. So anytime you want to include an image on your page, all you need is an img tag, and then there's an attribute. So far, we've not done any attributes in any of the tags we've been using. So there's something called attribute. Attributes is more like an additional piece of information that you are giving to the browser to tell the browser where to get a particular asset or what to do with that particular element, right? So we have something called source for image tag. So anytime you have an image, you have source. And source is simply the reference to the image that you want the browser to display. That is what source means. So I'm going to go online just to grab an image, just for the sake of example. I'm going to grab an image from the internet. Just grab any random image. So let's grab this, maybe this guy, right? I'm going to click on it. I'm going to right click and copy the image address. Don't forget, copy image address. So because I need a link to an image, so I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it right here. So this is the link to this image on the internet, right? And I've just added that to my source. So this source is the attribute of an image that tells the image the reference or the URL to the image that it wants to display. So I'm going to save this now. I'm going to go back to my page and I'm going to refresh. When I refresh, I should get that image on my page. You can see it, right? You can see it. So there's another attribute that I can add here that is called width. Width is that attribute that allows me to specify the size of my image. And I can also have an attribute called height, so I'm going to be seeing more attributes as we go, right? But right now, let me just stick with width. So just to reduce the size of this image, I'm going to call it, I'm going to give the width 200px so that the size is not this massive, right? When I refresh this now, you can see it has reduced in size. So this is now 200px. So I will get in another class, I will get to a bit of explanation around the dimensions that you can use here. So we have something called px, we have percentage, we have px, we have rem, we have em itself, we have pt. So I'm going to explain all of that to you, but this is pixel. When you see px, it means pixel, and it's just simply a unit of measurement for sizes on HTML or in HTML. But I'm going to explain the differences when you use percentage and when you use px when we get to CSS, right? So that's that. So let's go to the next slide quickly. Time we need to wrap up in a very short time. So we've done image. Like I said, you have an attribute that is called source. You have another attribute that is called alt. Alt is an attribute that allows you to put in an alternative text. So this alt means alternative. Alternative in the sense that you can write a text here that should be displayed if the image is not found. Simple text that shows up, that shows up when the image is not found. So if I put, for example, if I put a broken link here, let me just remove a letter from this image and try to go back and refresh. This image will not be found. Oh, there's another image like that. Okay, let me just remove it and put something like this. So this image should be broken now. Okay, you can see the image is broken. So once the image is not found, it's going to use the alternative text instead. So it's going to write the alternative text so that the user can still see what you're trying, what image is supposed to be in that particular slot. That is what the alt attribute is meant to do. All right, let's go to the next slide. How do you add a video to your page? You can simply add a video by using the iframe tag. And an iframe tag is an attribute that allows you to, similar to an image tag, it takes in a source as an attribute, it takes in a width and a height, and it takes in that source is a link to something you want to display on the page. So let me just quickly copy a YouTube video from somewhere. Let me copy this guy, for example. Just let me copy one YouTube video. Just a second. Okay, so this is a YouTube video. There is usually a share button that gives us a link. Okay, so this is an iframe, an example of an iframe. So if I copy this now, I can paste this. Let me undo so that I get my image back. Then I can come down here and paste the iframe. So this is the iframe tag. And like I said, it takes in the source attribute, which links to the YouTube video. And there are other attributes of the iframe like width, like height, like title, and the rest. So let's go back to our page and refresh this and we'll see what happens. So we should have an iframe. So you can see the YouTube video here. Any questions so far? No questions, right? So far. All right, let's move on. So that's how to include a video in your page. The next thing we want to include in our page is a link. So sometimes you want to include an attribute or an Ahref in your page. When you want to link from one page to another, usually you include on that page something called a link, right? And how do you write a link? How do you include a link? Something that can be clicked. Let me show you an example of a link. So I'm going to open this page now, or let me open this one. So this is an exciting website, right? If you come to this website, there are some links. So this get started here is a link. This one is a link. This one is a link. So how do you include something like this on your page? These are all links. If you see that when I mouse over, if you see the bottom left, just look somewhere below here. If you look there, you see that the link reference, where it's linking to, is showing there, bottom left. You can see it's changing. This is stored or try back. This is payment or try back. This is LMS or try back. So these are all links. How do you include something like this on your page? It's called an Ahref, right? So this is the tag. So this is what you have there. So it's an A tag. It's called an anchor tag, right? An anchor tag allows you to create a link. So all you need to do is put the text that should be displayed for the user in between that tag, and then put where it should lead to when they click inside the Ahref attribute, right? So if you want it to go to, for example, it should go to facebook.com. I can link it to https facebook.com, right? When I do that, when I click on this, let me say go to Facebook, for example. When I go there, let me refresh on our page, on our classwork. Somewhere at the bottom there, I should get go to Facebook. Can you see it? So if you can see go to Facebook here, if you click on this now, it's going to link me to Facebook. That is how you create an anchor tag, right? So far, I would love to get questions now. We are getting to the end of the class. I would love to get questions. The last thing now we want to look at before we close our HTML class is what we call styling, right? Okay, Destiny has a question. Go ahead. Destiny, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, sorry. Can I use CSS to resize the size of an image?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And how, if you can explain a little bit?
Yeah, so because we are not in CSS right now, that's why I'm not going. There are some people that this is the first time they are seeing HTML, so I don't want to. The next class is a CSS class, right? So
Okay.
we don't need to jump to CSS when we are not in CSS.
Okay, all right, no problem. Thank you.
All right, but just for the sake of curiosity, right? Because maybe because you are curious or because you're not ready. So this is, you can have it like this, you know, start with the same way you can reduce just like that. That's already CSS, right? So you can have the width, and then you can have the size that you want to reduce it to. Right? So that's a way of styling it in CSS. Right? But we're not in CSS yet. So Taiwo, Code Cafe, go ahead. Code Cafe, are you asking a question? Hello? Code
Hello,
Cafe,
sir. Can you hear me?
question? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, sir. My question is on the link. Please, can you explain the href?
Href. So Href just similarly to what you have for image. You have the attribute called source, right? The source is the URL to the image that you want to display with the image tag. So it's an attribute, right? It's an attribute. Attributes are simply additional attributes that a particular element contains that tells that browser what it should do with that element. So for an image tag, for example, it has this attribute called this thing that is showing up. So for an image tag, for example, it has width attribute, it has alt attribute, it has source attribute, and many more attributes, right? So they just simply tell the browser what the image tag should do. So it's the same thing with an href or an anchor tag. An anchor tag has an attribute called href. And the job of the href is to indicate the URL that this link should go to when this text is clicked. So if I click on this, go to Facebook, it will look for the href. Where is the href pointing to? Wherever the href is pointing to, that is where it will redirect to. So let me explain again. If I click on, say, go to, let's say launch, so let's say we want to launch YouTube, for example, right? If I say launch YouTube, I can put the URL of YouTube here, such that when I click on that text, launch YouTube, let's do that. Let me just remove this iframe so that it does not take up the entire screen. I'm going to remove these two guys. So I'm going to allow only these guys to show up. So when I refresh now, you can see we have a button here called launch YouTube, right? When I click on it, it's going to launch YouTube. I've clicked on it now. You can see it launch YouTube straight up. So that is the job of the href. So the job of the href is to tell us where the link should go to. Do you understand now?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's quickly move on. The next thing we want to do is a bit of styling, which someone has asked already, right? I think someone already asked about how to resize something. So that's the next thing we're going to look at. So every tag that you have, every HTML tag has an attribute called style. It has an attribute called style. Every element has this attribute. And what's the job of style? The job of style is to allow us to simply be able to, update some bit of beauty or aesthetics, add some aesthetics to the particular elements that we are looking at. So for example, we looked at an H1 at the top, right here, this big heading, if you remember. Let me go back and show you that. Where is that again? Okay, I've launched YouTube. Let me go back one step to my class. So we have this big heading right here, right? You can use the style attribute to add a bit of color to that style. So how do you do that? This H1 has an attribute called style. And within that style, these style attributes can take in a lot of different properties, right? This style is an attribute and it takes in properties. In CSS class, we will see a list of all the possible properties that a style can take in, because we're already kind of entering CSS by the time we start dealing with styling. Because HTML is you can look at HTML like the skeleton of a human being, right? If you strip down the flesh of a human or of someone, the skeleton is usually very ugly. The skeleton is not fine. That is HTML. HTML is simply the layout, the structure, the content on the page, but it's not beautiful. And when you look at CSS, CSS is called cascading style sheet. It's what allows beauty and aesthetics to now come to the HTML. So anytime you now, for humans, when you now have your flesh, your skin color, your eyelashes, your weave on, your shoe, your shirt, and all of that, all those aesthetics and all those paparazzi that you add to someone that makes the person beautiful or handsome, that is CSS. But the bare bone skeleton is the HTML, So we are kind of entering CSS now. So let's start with the first property that we want to learn. The first property we are looking at tonight is color, right? We're looking at color. Color is simply a property that takes in different colors. You can see here, if you are using VS Code will automatically suggest to you all the different colors that you can have, right? But what you need to really know, because you might not be using VS Code all the time, is something called the hexadecimal code colors. So in HTML, we have, or in CSS or HTML, we have something called color coding, and they are in hexadecimal. They are written as hexadecimal numbers. So you can have something like CCC, which is like a gray, FFL, which is like a white. Usually the number starts from 0 to 9 and A to F. We already know what hexadecimal numbers are now in mathematics that year. So hexadecimal numbers are numbers between 0 to 9 and A to F. So any combination of 0 to 9 and A to F is always a color. So like I said, I just wrote FFF on the screen. FFF means something. It's white. Because I've been doing this for long, I know that this is white. This is like a gray, right? So any combination, if you can just try it on your system, you can do any combination, any random combination between A to F, this is also a color. Or CO9, any random thing will give you a color. So, but with time, you will get to know all the colors you can have. But if you don't want to remember all those hexadecimal code anyway, you can just use the English text for a color. So for example, I can say red, I can say white, and it will still give me the colors, right? So you can use their English version or the English text if you know the name in English. So I'm going to call this color red. I'm going to go back to my class and I'm going to refresh, and then you see that the color of this text has become red. If I change this to blue and I refresh, I get a blue. It's as simple as that. So that's how you can style a particular element. And someone asked us the other time that how do you reduce the size of something, an image or a text and all of that. So I'm going to, go back to the image now, and I'm going to style it. So I'm going to enable this image. So by the way, I did mention something called commenting. So I just used a comment here to hide away the image and the iframe. If you remember, this image was shown before, but I did something to it that made it to disappear from the page. It's called comment. And how do you do comment? You do comment in HTML by doing this. So any item you want to remove from the screen, let's say you want to remove this entire section from the screen, you can comment it out by opening a bracket. It's also a tag. Opening a bracket, an exclamation mark, excuse me, double what's it called now? Double dash, and then that's comment out everything after it. Then when you want to end the comment, you have a double dash and a close bracket. So everything between this double dash and this double dash will be commented out. So that's how to do a comment. So now this will disappear. If I save this now and I refresh, just watch out for these bins. This second bins here, this one, it will disappear. You can see that. So that's it. That's how you comment something now. So that's what I used down here to remove the image. So what I want to do now is I want to enable the image. So I'm going to remove my comment, and I'm going to only comment out the iframe. So when I refresh this now, I should get my image back on the screen. So you can see this. So someone asked, like I said the other time, that can you use styling to, can you use style to reduce the width of an image? Yes. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So let's quickly do that. All right. So are you guys still with me? Hello, are you guys still with me?
We are with
Yes,
you.
sir.
We are with you. We are with
Yes,
you.
sir.
Yes, sir, we are with you.
We are with you.
All right. Thank you.
with you.
All right. Thank you. So as I was explaining, I was saying that you can use style to reduce the height. So if you don't want to use the attribute width, you can use style. So let me use style now. Style. And then with this style, you can say width is 100 px. It's still the same thing. It's going to reduce this to 100 now. By refresh, you can see that's reduced it to 100. So that's how you can use style to reduce the width of something. So that is, we've come to the end of our class for today, because it's already 1 hour and we want to spend exactly 1 hour for this class. So we've come to the end of our class today. We continue. Let me check what the next class date is now. I want to just be sure what the next class is. All right, so I think the next class is going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday, September 5th. Okay, so it's tomorrow. So it's tomorrow by same time, 9 p.m. All right, so you need to get back to the class tomorrow, and then we will continue at CSS. So I will take questions now before we wrap up. And then there is a video here.
I can't hear you, sir.
Here that I expect all of you to see. There's a video add on, and it will help you to understand what I am saying in class, so that you not be lagging behind. So please scroll down to the end of this page and take and watch this video here, this self-lecture HTML basic. Watch this video. Just click on play and watch this video. It's going to help you a lot if you watch this video, because when I'm now explaining in class, you are familiar with, especially for those who are new to this. It's very important for those who are new to this HTML. Please watch this self-paced video. It's very important. All right, so ask your question. Oh, Chima, you raised your hand. Abraham, you raised your hand. Ask your question. Hello? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the class. I actually wanted to ask about the video before. That this class, can we see it from YouTube tomorrow so that I can actually go over it before the next class? I think you said
I'm struggling, like I'm really struggling to hear all you said, but I could hear that today's class, maybe you wanted a video or something. I'm trying, I don't know if you can type it in the chat box because like your voice is very low. Yeah, type it in the chat box. I'll pick it up. Yeah, go ahead, Taiwo, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask if I can get a video of this class so that I can practice what's more, so
Yes,
that there won't be a
definitely.
delay or I will be lag behind.
Yes. So there are two videos. There is a video in your course, right? If you like, can you see my screen? If you can see my screen, there's a video right here under the lesson section. Watch this video. It's important that you watch this video. That's one. Then two, the recording of this class, we will share it on the WhatsApp group. We'll share the link to the recording on this WhatsApp group. So you can also rewatch that after the class, right? So, any other question?
When is our next class, sir?
Next class is tomorrow.
Same time?
Yeah, same time, 9 p.m.